My husband's mistress thought she won, until she walked into a dinner I arranged with her parents, and everything she tried to hide came crashing down. The first time I suspected something was wrong was on a Tuesday evening. My husband, Daniel, had been working late, more often than usual. At first, I believed him. After all, he'd always been ambitious at work. But then, I noticed little details that didn't add up. A second phone he kept hidden in his desk drawer. Credit card charges at restaurants we never visited together. I told myself I was imagining things. After 15 years of marriage, I didn't want to face the possibility of betrayal. But then, I found her name. Emily. A text notification flashed across his screen while he was in the shower. Last night was perfect. Can't wait to see you again. My hands shook, but strangely I didn't cry. Something inside me hardened instead. For a week, I observed. He lied easily, almost too easily, and that's what fueled my resolve. I wasn't going to scream or beg or even confront him yet. No, I wanted her to feel the weight of what she was doing. When I dug deeper, I discovered Emily wasn't just some stranger. She was younger, bold, and apparently proud of being the other woman. I even overheard her once at Daniel's company Christmas party telling a friend she'd finally won, that he'd eventually leave me. That was when the idea formed in my mind. If Emily thought she had won, then I needed to show her exactly how wrong she was. And I knew just the way to do it. I was going to invite her parents to dinner. Planning that dinner became my secret project. I didn't tell anyone, not even my closest friend. Instead, I spent evenings pretending to scroll through recipes, when in reality, I was digging through social media. Emily had been careless. Her profiles were public, filled with glamorous selfies and captions about living unapologetically. That's where I found them, her parents and Richard. A perfectly respectable couple, pillars of their community, who clearly had no idea their daughter was sleeping with a married man. I messaged in first, keeping my tone warm and formal. I introduced myself as Daniel's wife and explained that I had something important to discuss regarding Emily. I didn't accuse, didn't sound bitter. Just a polite invitation to dinner at our home, insisting that I believed in honesty and thought families deserved the truth. To my surprise, and responded within hours. She thanked me for reaching out and said both she and her husband would come. Her message ended with a line that stayed with me. If what you say is true, our daughter has gone down a dangerous path. We'll be there. That night, as Daniel came home late again smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine, I set the dinner date in stone. Saturday evening. I couldn't help but picture the scene in my head. Emily walking into my dining room, expecting a cozy secret dinner with Daniel, only to find her parents sitting there waiting. For the first time since discovering the affair, I smiled. By Friday, Daniel had unknowingly confirmed my plan. Over breakfast, he kissed my cheek casually and said he had a late client dinner on Saturday. I almost laughed into my coffee. He thought he was clever, sneaking off to see her while I stayed home, oblivious. Little did he know, I had already set the stage. I spent the afternoon polishing the house until it gleamed. Candles, crystal glasses, a carefully set dining table, not for romance but for revelation. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I had cooked dinners, hoping he'd notice, hoping he'd put his phone down long enough to appreciate me. This time, he would notice, but for reasons he'd never forget. When Saturday arrived, and Richard showed up right on time. They looked nervous, dressed formally as if attending a difficult meeting, and clutched her handbag tightly, her lips pressed thin. Richard shook my hand firmly, his eyes searching mine for answers. "Thank you for coming," I said softly, leading them inside. "I know this isn't easy." "It's harder imagining what we're about to hear," Richard replied, his voice low but steady. I poured wine for them, steadying my own trembling hands. My heart wasn't racing from fear, it was anticipation. For once, I wasn't the one about to be blindsided. At exactly 7:15, the doorbell rang. Daniel was punctual when it came to his mistress. I opened the door, and there she was, Emily, in a silk dress far too bold for what she thought was a secret date night. She smiled smugly, brushing past me as if I were invisible. Then she stepped into the dining room and froze. Her parents were sitting at the table. The color drained from Emily's face so fast I thought she might faint. Her confident smile twisted into something awkward and brittle. "Mom? Dad? What are you?" she stammered, but her voice cracked before she could finish. and stood slowly, her expression caught between fury and heartbreak. "Emily," she said, her tone sharp but trembling. "Is this true? Are you really involved with a married man?" Daniel, who had been standing behind her with his coat half off, froze like a statue. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. For once, Mr. Smooth Talker didn't have a script. Richard's eyes narrowed, shifting from his daughter to my husband. "This is the man?" he asked me directly. I nodded. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Emily finally tried to laugh it off. "This is ridiculous. Mom, Dad, you don't understand. It's not what it looks like. Don't lie to us, Emily." And snapped, slamming her hand on the table. "We raised you better than this. Do you realize the kind of shame you've brought to this family?" Daniel tried to step in, raising his palms as if he could calm the storm. "Maybe we should all sit down." "Sit down." Richard cut him off, his voice booming. "You betray your wife, and you dare to suggest we sit down." I didn't need to say a word. Watching Emily squirm under the weight of her parents' disappointment was enough. Every ounce of smugness had evaporated, replaced with panic. She looked smaller somehow, like a child caught stealing. For the first time in months, I felt in control. And this dinner had only just begun. Daniel finally pulled out a chair, trying to regain control of the situation. "Let's just talk like adults," he muttered, his voice shaking more than he wanted it to. Emily stayed standing, clutching her purse to her chest like it could shield her from the judgment around the table. "Mom, Dad, please, it's not what you think." "Oh, it's exactly what we think," Richard said sharply. His disappointment filled the room more than his anger did. "You are sleeping with a married man, Emily. And not just any man, a man who has a wife, a home, and vows he swore to keep." Emily's eyes darted to me, as if searching for mercy. But I just lifted my wine glass and took a slow sip. This wasn't my battle to fight anymore. She'd brought her parents into it the moment she decided to play with another woman's marriage. Anne's voice cracked when she spoke again. "Do you realize what this makes you look like? A woman with no dignity, no respect for herself or for others. We raised you to value family, Emily." Emily's lower lip trembled. For once, she had no clever comeback, no smug grin. She looked trapped, cornered by the very people she thought would never find out. Daniel finally tried to throw himself into the fire. "This is between Emily and me. With all due respect, maybe you shouldn't." Richard turned on him, so fast Daniel shut up mid-sentence. "You don't get to tell me where I belong in my daughter's life. You ruined your marriage, but I will not let you ruin her future." The tension thickened until it felt like the air itself was trembling. I leaned back in my chair, finally allowing myself a quiet thought. This is better than I imagined. And yet, part of me wondered, what would Emily do now that the mask had completely slipped? Emily finally dropped into a chair, her shoulders slumping as if all the air had been let out of her. The glamorous silk dress she'd chosen for the night suddenly looked out of place, almost pitiful under the dining room light. "Mom, Dad, please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You don't understand. Daniel and I, it's real. He loves me. He said he was going to leave her." Every pair of eyes turned to Daniel. He froze, caught like an animal in headlights. His lips parted, but no words came out. "Is that true?" And demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You promised our daughter you'd divorce your wife." Daniel's face flushed red, then pale. I never said that," he stammered, finally looking at me. "I swear it wasn't like that." I raised an eyebrow, holding his gaze. For once, he couldn't read me, couldn't predict my reaction. And that terrified him more than his confrontation with Emily's parents. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "You liar," she hissed at him. "You told me you'd leave her. You told me we were building a future. I gave up everything for you." Richard slammed his hand against the table, the sound echoing through the room. "Enough. Emily, this man has made a fool of both of you. And you," he turned his glare to Daniel, his voice low and seething, "you've disgraced not only your wife, but also dragged my daughter down into your mess." The silence that followed was brutal. Daniel looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. Emily was sobbing, mascara streaking down her cheeks. And me? I sat there calm, composed, sipping my wine, feeling the strange satisfaction of watching both of them choke on their own lies. But I knew the night wasn't over. Not yet. Dinner was supposed to be served, but no one touched the food. The roasted chicken, the vegetables, the warm bread, they all sat untouched, the smell filling the air like a cruel reminder that this was no ordinary family gathering. Emily dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, her voice trembling. "I love him. You can't choose who you fall in love with." Anne's expression hardened. "Love," she repeated bitterly. "You call this love? Sneaking around with another woman's husband? That's not love, Emily. That's desperation." Daniel buried his face in his hands, but I noticed his jaw tightening. He hated losing control, hated being exposed. For years, he had balanced everything so carefully, the lies, the excuses, the little performances. Now the stage had collapsed, and everyone could see the truth. Richard leaned forward, his eyes locked on his daughter. "Emily, listen to me. Men like him will never choose you. If he betrayed his wife, he will betray you too. You're just fooling yourself." Emily's sobs grew louder, but there was no comfort for her this time. Not from her parents, and certainly not from me. Finally, I put my glass down and spoke for the first time since she had walked in. My voice was steady, clear. "You thought you won. You thought taking him from me meant you had some kind of prize. But all you've done is humiliate yourself in front of the people whose opinions should matter most to you." Emily's head snapped toward me, her eyes wide and wet. For a moment, I saw pure hatred in her gaze. But it didn't scare me. It only confirmed what I already knew. She hadn't expected me to fight back. And she definitely hadn't expected me to win this way. Daniel finally snapped, his voice rising louder than I'd ever heard in our home. "This is insane. Why are we all sitting here like it's some kind of trial? You don't understand." I cut him off, calm but firm. "No, Daniel. You don't understand. For once, you don't get to control the story. You lied to me. You lied to her. And now everyone sees it." And nodded sharply, almost grateful that I'd spoken. Richard, meanwhile, turned to his daughter again. "Emily, you need to walk away from this man. Tonight. If you stay, you'll lose more than just your dignity." Emily shook her head frantically, her voice trembling. "I can't just walk away. I love him." "You don't love him," I interrupted, my voice low but unwavering. "You love the idea of winning. You thought you'd stolen something from me, that it made you powerful. But now, look around, Emily. Does this look like victory?" Her lip quivered, and for the first time, she had no response. Daniel tried again, reaching for my hand across the table. "Please, let's just talk privately. You and me. We can fix this." I pulled my hand back before he could touch me. "There's nothing left to fix." His face fell, panic flickering in his eyes. He had counted on my silence, my forgiveness, my habit of smoothing things over. But that woman was gone. Anne's voice trembled when she spoke next. "Emily, if you don't end this tonight, you will not step foot in our home again. We will not watch you destroy yourself like this." The room went silent. Emily's tears dripped onto the white linen tablecloth. Daniel stared at me like I was the one who had betrayed him. And I realized something powerful. I wasn't the victim here anymore. I was the one in control. Daniel's face crumpled like paper. For a ridiculous second, I felt almost sorry for him. Not because he'd hurt me, but because his carefully constructed life was unraveling in front of people whose respect he actually wanted. He had wanted to be seen as the successful, desirable man. Now he was just exposed. "Please," he whispered, collapsing into his chair, as if the weight of the room had physically pushed him down. "I never meant." "You never meant to what?" And asked, voice cold now, with disappointment rather than anger. "To ruin a marriage? To lie to our faces? To make our daughter believe you'd leave your wife for her?" Emily, still shaking, tried to defend him. "He said he loved me. He said he would leave her." "Did he?" Richard's tone was soft but lethal. "Or did he say whatever you wanted to hear to keep you there?" Daniel stared at Emily, then at me, and something in his eyes finally slipped, the arrogance, the fluency of excuses. "I told her things," he admitted, sputtering. "But I didn't mean to. I wasn't going to. I thought I could. I thought I could have both." The room tilted a little. You could almost see the math in his brain. Keep the house, keep the affair, manage the appearances. He had believed in the fantasy of compartments until they bled into one another and revealed everything. Richard stood up and walked to the window as if to avoid looking directly at his daughter. You think you can have someone in pieces, Daniel, he said without turning. Think about what you're saying when you believe you can keep two lives. Think about the people you're hurting. And reached for Emily's hand, fingers trembling. We thought you were better than this. We thought you were someone who chose the right thing. She looked at her daughter with that awful, tiny pleading look parents get, the one that asks where they went wrong. Emily's sobs turned into a shaky laugh that sounded like defeat. I did what I had to do, she said, voice small. I thought he loved me. I loved you, Daniel blurted, and suddenly the lie was so naked that it made even his own confession sound absurd. But not like that. He stopped because there was nothing left to patch the sentence into. I sat very still. Everything I'd rehearsed, the invitation, the calm voice, the dinner, had been leading to this unadorned moment of truth. I could have torn him apart there, recited every lie, every late night, every hidden receipt. But the parents' faces told me what punishment would hurt him more, to be publicly seen as the man who had destroyed trust, who had been exposed for what he really was. Emily, Richard said finally, turning slowly. We'll take you home. We'll talk there. But tonight you need to know that adults have consequences. You will have to choose what kind of life you want. She nodded like someone waking from a bad dream, and hugged her like a mother holding on to a child who had slipped away. Daniel reached for me then, a last-ditch, ridiculous, familiar plea. Please, can we talk? Privately. We can fix this. I let the silence stretch. I watched him. I remembered the years, birthdays he'd missed, the nights I had sat awake listening to his soft breathing, the small kindnesses that had tied us together. I remembered when I had once imagined my life with him stretching peaceful and ordinary into old age. All of it felt like an old photograph you realized was staged. No, I said quietly. We can't fix this. His face folded like something given up. Then what do you want? He asked, as if I were the one making a demand he could not meet. What I want is the truth to live by, I said, and for my children to have a life where their parents' promises mean something. He swallowed. Will you? He couldn't finish. And, moving to the door with her daughter, paused. We'll call you tomorrow, she said, not to Daniel but to me, a courtesy of civility. Thank you for telling us. They left. The house echoed with the sound of the front door closing, and for the first time in a long time, the silence in my home felt like a choice. When the house was empty, Daniel sat across from me, hollow and small. You're going to leave, he said, stating the obvious as if it were some bargaining chip. I looked at him. I already have, I answered. In my heart. Tonight just made it official. He reached for his phone and typed something quickly, then stopped. He looked up at me with a mixture of fear and pleading. Don't make this about revenge, he whispered. It's not, I said. It's about the life you broke. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, there was a decision in his expression I recognized. Survival, not redemption. I'll go, he said. I'll move out. I nodded. Do it properly. Don't try to hide anything. He swallowed and left that night with a single overnight bag. The door closed behind him. I stood in the doorway and felt the strange, hollow ache of the end and the quiet pulse of something new beginning. But even as the night fell, one question hung there, stubborn as a shadow. How do you rebuild trust in a home cracked by deceit? The divorce papers came weeks later, drawn tight and clinical, but the emotional work began long before signatures. People assume the legal end is the hardest part. That's when the paperwork piles up and the world notices. But the real work is quieter, the rebuilding of a life you thought was permanent. I told the kids on a rainy Saturday afternoon. I sat them down at the kitchen table where we'd done homework and Sunday pancakes for years. Lucas looked at me with the wary scan of a child who knows adults are misleading. Did Daddy leave? He asked, simple and direct. Yes, I said. He's going to live elsewhere for a while. I kept my voice steady because the one gift I could give them was steadiness. They needed to know that the anchor, me, was still there. School picked up, routine settled, and the house filled again with ordinary things. Lost socks, science projects, the low hum of life. People asked questions. Friends offered help, some awkwardly, others with arms ready. I accepted both. Emily's parents called once more, weeks after that dinner. She's getting help, and said, voice soft or chastened. She didn't realize how deeply she'd hurt people. We're trying to help her see that. There was no triumph in my response, no relish. I said what was true. I hope she learns. As for Daniel, he found what he always tried to avoid: consequences. He lost trust at work after rumors spread. Mutual friends chose sides or retreated. He called sometimes, voice small and ashamed, looking for closure or for some old comfort. I would take the calls when I needed to, mostly to talk logistics for the kids. Sometimes I would be cold. Sometimes I would just breathe and answer simply, "We're doing what's best for them." Months later, at Easter, I found myself laughing at something Lucas said about a science project. The sound startled me, bright and real. It wasn't vindication. It was relief. I realized I was not defined by the betrayal any more than I was defined by the marriage's golden years. I was defined by the life I chose to live now, present, honest, and open with my children. People asked if I felt revenge was complete. They expected some grand moment, public humiliation, financial punishment, dramatic social fallout. But the truth is more mundane and truer. My victory wasn't watching Emily fall. It was watching myself rise. I started going back to small things I had stopped doing: Sunday hikes, watercolor classes I'd always said I'd take, coffee dates with friends. I found a new rhythm where I could breathe and think beyond the past. I dated once, awkwardly and briefly, and realized the scars I carried meant I would be choosier, gentler with myself, and unwilling to settle. Once, months later, Emily's name pulsed through my mind when I saw a familiar dress in a store, bold silk, a little too sharp. I smiled at the memory of that dinner, not because of her humiliation, but because of how ordinary humans are in the face of consequences. People get choices, sometimes they choose poorly. The useful thing is whether they learn. At the end of the year, my ex sent one last message, a clumsy, "I'm sorry," that felt like a coin tossed at the curb. I didn't reply. I had said what needed to be said in the room where it mattered the most, with people who would carry the truth forward: my children, the parents who had been lied to, and myself. If there is a lesson I learned that I want to keep like a warm talisman, it's this: dignity is not silence. When someone tries to steal your life by pretending their lies are love, you don't have to scream. You can choose the sober, hard route of setting boundaries, telling the truth, and letting the truth do its work. I still set the table sometimes with little extra care. Not to catch anyone, but because the ritual matters. Because family dinners are where we practice what we mean when we promise to be there for one another. That night, I arranged with her parents changed everything, but not because I sought revenge. Because I wanted the truth to be seen, and because once the truth is seen, you can finally begin to build something honest on top of the rubble. And that messy, painful quiet felt like winning.